Brian Smith, our Locked On Recruiting Insider here at the network, joining me here on Locked On College Football, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Julian Lewis, a guy that has reclassified from the 2026 cycle, might still be the top quarterback in the 2025 class, just dropped his visit dates. And Brian, it's about as loaded as it gets in a lot of high-profile schools and coaches as he looks to take his collegiate visits.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting deal because he's been committed to SC for a while. Obviously, the passing game with that particular offense is pretty good, and Julian's as accurate as you're going to find. I was talking to somebody the other day. He might be one of the top 3 quarterbacks to high school I've ever seen, just putting the ball where it needs to go. So it obviously fits Lincoln and all the things they do. But he's got visits coming up here with some other schools: Alabama on the 8th of March, Georgia on the 14th of March, 16th of March is Auburn, Colorado on the 22nd, and then back out to SC on the 30th. So pretty wide-ranging list, depending on how you want to look at it. And his recruitment, it's going to go all the way to signing day, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of those guys where you're going to get a major push from every staff, and no one's going to kind of, half-ass this thing. They're not going to say, if he comes here, great. If not, like, this is a recruitment that you have to put on the full court press from the jump, and you've got some heavy hitters here, both with their recruiting brands and the head coaches going after Lewis.
Yeah, Kirby Smart, I've been told, is not going to take another quarterback until he knows what Julian wants to do, which makes me wonder, well, maybe Kirby knows more about his timeline than I do. I would hope so. But at the same time, like Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, there's plenty of quarterbacks down here that UGA would normally take. But the number one kid is an hour and a half from your campus. I get it. And it probably sticks in his craw that a West Coast school currently has him committed. Alabama obviously just hired Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if you've heard, but he's pretty good with the passing game. There's rumors about that. Then you have Auburn, which Hugh Freeze is one of the best play callers in college football and has done wonders with certain quarterbacks. And then finally, you have Deion Sanders, which that's its own entity, and I don't know how to define it, but his kid's a hell of a quarterback, so he's going to be able to sell that. And at the end of the day, I'm sure there's always a wild card out there, so we'll see if somebody else can get involved too.
When I look at the lineup of teams that are after him, it's definitely a group of schools that, as you mentioned, has got a really good recent track record with quarterbacks. Kalen DeBoer going back to Indiana with Michael Penix, Jake Haener, Fresno State, Penix again up at Washington, Lincoln Riley. Oh, we don't need to say anything there. He's the quarterback whisperer in college football. #1 draft picks and Heisman Trophy winners and contenders are just kind of what he generates at that position every year. Deion Sanders has got his son there right now, who's really talented, but he's going to be gone. So if Lewis is looking for a place where he can come in and start right away, I think you could perhaps argue the place where he would face the least amount of competition would be Colorado, because they're the team of this bunch, probably along with Auburn, the least set at quarterback going forward in the recruiting class that he has since reclassified to. Do you think that factors into his recruitment at all?
I wonder about it. I've only talked with Juju once, and that was about a year ago at the Elite 11 at his high school. And he's a really subdued kid, but like they just don't let him talk to media anymore. So I don't know for sure, but the sense that I get, and from talking to people like Chad Simmons and stuff that are closer to his recruitment, he doesn't fear anything. So I'm not sure depth chart's really that big a deal to him, which is a good sign. And it's one of the reasons I personally like him higher than maybe somebody else might. If you're afraid of competition, you're not a top 10 recruit. That's just kind of my own personal perspective, but nothing really bothers him. It gets kind of like water off a duck's back. He just keeps going no matter what happens. Not saying he doesn't like the opportunity, but look at UGA. Their quarterback position will be open after next year too. So there's a lot of ways you can look at it. Miller Moss has 1 or 2 years left. I mean, after that, he would be the guy at USC. So they're all interesting at least, but Juju's just going to do what he wants to do, in my opinion.
You talk about him in glowing terms, and a lot of other people do as well. He's a 5-star quarterback for a reason, but what do you see from him when you watch him play and what you see from him on film? Why does he stand out as one of maybe the top quarterbacks in the 2025 class?
I've seen him live 3 times, and I've watched a ton of his film, and there's one thing that is very consistent, and that's his ability to keep his feet where they need to be every freaking rep. It's the same consistency with the balance, and that keeps the ball going where it should. He puts the ball out in front in a catchable position over and over again. It's like a robot. And it doesn't matter if he's got somebody in his face. As a freshman, he threw for like 550 in the 7A state title game in Georgia. So, yeah, literally. So, I mean, there are dudes, in case you didn't know, in Georgia, especially like at that level. And he still found a way to do it without a running game. Yeah, this tiny kid out there is like 5'11", trying to get away from these big guys, and he did it. If you're able to score big points in the 6, 7A level at Georgia, even as a senior, as a quarterback, you should be proud. He did it as a freshman. Then he just kept going and going and going. He's got 7,200 plus yards in his first 2 seasons of high school football in Georgia, and 96 touchdowns. It's solid. So
96, is that total touchdowns, running and throwing the ball? Just passing. Correct. Just passing. That's a lot. That's a lot of touchdowns. What does he bring as a prospect, though? Who would you perhaps compare him to as a recent high school or college prospect going to the NFL?
Very easy, Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. Okay.
Yeah, it's straight up.
Is it that playmaking ability with him that makes him such, an appealing quarterback, and the accuracy with which he delivers the football? Because when I think Bryce Young, that's what I think of, is instinctual playmaker and accurate thrower of the football with good timing.
I would say that's very accurate, and even their demeanors are the same. I met Bryce in LA a couple of years ago, and I asked him to give me a Nick Saban story, and he's pretty cerebral, kind of laid back. It's like Juju just takes after him. It's like the exact same thing. He thinks everything through, comes up with an answer, and gives out a computer kind of answer that answers everything in one sentence. He's just very, very calculated with whatever he does. And that's probably one of the reasons Bryce was so good. I mean, he gets the SEC competition. 20, they were good, and they won the title. The first 2 times that he had a chance to be the guy, they weren't as good, didn't have as many players, but he still made up for it in such like that Texas game. Juju can kind of do those things too. So I think he'll make a team better, even if he doesn't go to Georgia. If he went to Colorado, they would be a 4-win team, and they'd jump up to 8. Like, he can win you games in those close situations that Colorado always seems to come a little short. He'd find a way to make it. A 3rd and 8 play is no big deal to him. 4th and 1, if he has to run, he'll make it. Whatever it is, he'll figure it out.
USC, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Colorado. Who do you feel like has the lead? USC is where he's verbally committed to, is what you said earlier, but does it feel like something that the Trojans are capable of losing to one of these other schools? Like, how set do you feel like he is on the Trojans?
I don't think he's set anywhere, but right now, if I had to pick, I'd say woof woof. It's dogs. Like, they're trending pretty hard. And how often does Kirby really lose the kid that he wants? I mean, like, in-state kid, it's maybe every 2 or 3 years. Like, this would be a hard one to take too. I get it, but it's a quarterback as well. Like, he's all in. He's went to visit him several times. They have a close relationship, and it's just closer. So the other part is they just took 6 offensive linemen in their last class, one of the greatest offensive line classes I've ever seen. I'm sure his father has discussed that with his son. So I would like that if I was Juju. Just saying.
It turns out having good weapons, which you'll probably have at Georgia, and a great offensive line also tend to help quarterbacks. Usually we talk about that in the context of the NFL, but Georgia being the NFL talent machine that it is, I think it's fairly comparable anyway there. So that's where things stand for now with Julian Lewis, 5-star quarterback in the 2025 cycle. Brian Smith, our Locked On Recruiting Insider, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Brian, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, whenever and wherever that may be. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.